Well, welcome everybody to another Simplicity of Logic. Today's title is You Can't Have Your Cake and Eat It. Basically, today's topic will be about Socratic logic and consistency. So, let's get on with it. First, to explain, Socratic logic is done by a simple method of basically having a base truth, such as the sun will rise next day, or thou shalt not lie, although those are bad examples, but having a base truth and then working negatively towards it. For example, you would say like you have a base truth and then you will ask questions leading down to it, and if every point makes logical sense, you have made logical sense basically. And that's how basically Socratic logic works. And on top of that, I want to add in another idea, which is consistency. And this was not really in the Socratic logic, it's basically in basic philosophy. But the thing is that I find a lot of people tend to basically have inconsistencies in that they make excuses. Like many times they would say like, oh, in that situation I would do and this and that, and basically it's almost hypocritical because they're not keeping to the base truth. They literally flip-flop between each decision. So I add that on top of Socratic logic to make something which I feel makes the best decision for all the problems that come up in life. But before we get into details of Socratic logic, let's talk about the flaws to always give a fair view. And to go into it, the biggest flaw of Socratic logic is, of course, the base truth. Like I explained before, it's very hard to find a base truth that is absolutely true. Any problem can be argued. So, I mean, it's not that big a problem because, like David Hume has agreed that if you see example 1,000 green apples and the 1,001th apple is red, so basically that just because you see 1,000 green apples doesn't mean that all apples are green, so you can never be sure of anything. But even he agreed, like with the scientists, that even though it's flawed, you don't really have a choice but to go by what you know. So as with that situation, I don't believe it's that huge a problem, but always be ready to change along with the situation, and of course most importantly, evidence. And so now let's get into Socratic logic. The simple one I would like to use is businessmen, because nowadays a lot of people it's basically much easier to set up businesses. There are a lot of people think they're businessmen and they like to say they're honest. Now this is the problem why I say you can't have your cake and eat it. A lot of people like to say they're honest businessmen, and there's a huge problem with that, because if you go by the word honest, what does it mean? It basically means you don't lie. That's the biggest thing about it. Or you're acting in good faith. So let's see whether you can have your cake and eat it. Let's go by Socratic logic. The logic is there is such thing as an honest. You are honest. Okay, so let's say you want to be an honest businessman. Firstly, let's say you buy an apple at 50 cents and you're selling at $1. Customer comes up to you and he says, how much profit are you making from that? As a good businessman, you can't say anything but 50 cents. On top of that, if someone came up to you and said, I want to buy that apple for $6. As a good businessman, you would sell it at $6 or even $5.50 and tell him you're still making just small profit or something along that lines. But as an honest person, you basically either have to tell him the truth that you only bought it at 50 cents or sell it to him at cost. So as you can see, like with the Socratic logic, if you try working down to it to an honest person, you can't reach it, and thus it's flawed. Therefore, That's what I mean by you can't have your cake and eat it, because a lot of people like to say, oh, I'm a honest person, but I'm also a good businessman, which it doesn't fit. So for that example is why I'm trying to show from an everyday situation, which probably you meet a lot of people who are businessmen who also say they're honest. The truth is they're not honest people. Now, that being said, like when I talked to someone about it, he said, so that means there's no honest people in the world in your view. And that is the thing. You see, I'm not insulting anybody. I'm just making the point that is true. There is no honest people, because people flip-flop. And if you want to say you're honest, you have to be honest consistently. The only people who are like that are pure Kantians. That means the way early Kantians, Kantian morality, by which there was this example in university which they gave, which is if a Nazi came to your door and he said, and you had a Jew hiding in the house basically, and he said, do you have any Jews in the house? A pure Kantian who believes in thou shalt not lie cannot lie and must say there is a Jew in the house. Whereas a lot of people would flip-flop and say that I'm an honest person, but in that situation I'm going to basically say no. So you can see the inconsistency. It's almost hypocritical. You have to stick by your guns. And again, so if you want to say no, you're not honest. So therefore I'm not even insulting people. It's just that you have to look at the evidence presented and work along consistently, work down to the base truth, and if you can get there, you're logical. And that's how Socratic logic works. And like with this business example, some people might take offense, but that is what philosophy is about, is being able to look at yourself and realizing that you are pretty ignorant, or all of us are pretty ignorant, and that we're trying to get to know ourselves a bit better. And the hard stuff is the hardest things to recognize. If you watch the latest TED video, which I will link below, with Peter Singer, he points out, like all these people at TED are very smart people and helping the world in many ways. He pointed out how basically they were basically as much murderers in a way as a person who would not help a child who got knocked down by a van. And you can hear, even though he makes so much sense, at the end of it, the applause was really sporadic. Why? Because people just they're thinking, oh, I'm such a great person, but here's this guy telling me I'm a bad person. But the truth is, he makes sense in logic. Maybe I felt those videos show that the hard truths are the hardest to face. So in conclusion, I hope that you taken away something from this, and you can apply Socratic logic every day to your life. And trust me, it helped me to basically have a lot less regret. I can't say I'm having the $1 million lifestyle, but definitely I'm not regretting it. And I hope that you can use it too, and you have a better life too. Till next word.